Generation Z.
Generation Z. Generation Z.
Generation Z.
Generation Z.
Generation Z.
Good morning,
Generation
fellow
Z.
viewers. This is the Sunday Show on Channel 4. We have with us here today members of the public here to represent their generation. So we have a baby boomer here to Eric Davidoff here to represent the baby boomer generation. We have Mike Tyrrell here to represent the Generation Z, and an expert who will give you all educational information on both these generations. So, shall I get us started? Would you care to give us a little bit of information about these generations here today?
Yes, so baby boomers were born just after the war in between 1946 and 1964, while Gen Z were born in between 1995 and 2015.
Thank you very much. Okay, so today we will be discussing which generation was better prepared for what awaits them, for their future, for their life. Would you like to get us started?
So, as I believe that the generation that had
Better prepared.
was better prepared for life was definitely the baby boomers, and there's few reasons because of that. The baby boomers, since their birth, they were taught to be optimistic about life and work for everything they have. So, for example, when I was much younger, I used to have to work in my parents' Mexican shop. We used to have a restaurant just because to get our families and work to be finally happy, because after the war, as you may all know, there was this economic crash. So I worked since the age of 8. I've been working.
Well, let me interrupt you there. But starting in around 1960, there was a happy time where the people would consume a lot, and everybody was happy. So even though just after the war it was really horrible having to rebuild everything, when you started to become a teenager, you were actually becoming really happy.
Perhaps I could say about what you say. Well, you're just helping to my point, because there was so much assumption that everyone was taught to learn and to be optimistic for the future life. And if you didn't know, most people that are influenced, that created technology, were from baby boomers, such as Bill Gates. He created Microsoft, and he was a baby boomer.
Yes, so you say Bill Gates, he created Microsoft and he was a baby boomers, but that means that if we are addicted to smartphones and to tablets or TVs or just electronic devices today, isn't that your fault then?
Well, I see your point, but let me say something. So, we created technology for other reasons. There's a difference between the creation of the technology, and then there's how you use it. It's the same thing with every object. Is how you use the object. So we never intended people to use their phones and be addicted to them. We intended just to make something to help people's lives.
Yes, you're right on that point, and it has made our life a lot easier. Now we don't have to. We can go on the internet. We know the news everywhere around the world. We know what's happening in every single countries of the world, thanks to technology.
That is very important. The evolution of society with the development of new technologies has been very important in influencing these new generations. Would you have something to say about this?
Well,
Dr.
yes.
Belinsky?
Gen Z in the USA, 74% of them spend 10 hours or more of their time online, on any device online. And 88 of them uses Instagram. 41% of them says that it's their favorite social media, and they use it basically every day.
Yes, we use it every day because to us it's a way of communicating with other people. It's like you used to go outside and play to the park, or and see your friends all day. And now, thanks to technology, when we can't see our friends, then we go on social media and we speak to them.
Now, let me say something from what you say. You say that usually you're gonna say Gen Z are less happy than baby boomers. And I completely agree with you. And there's a reason why. The reason is people are so consumed in their phones and those thing called likes and this idea of likes and comments, who is more loved. In my time, that idea didn't exist. We just to go to a park and have fun.
So, I'd like to make a point here, just to say that you were born in 1958, as you said, and 1958 was more than 10 years afterwards. And if we live in the world with technology, and if we live in a great world today, it's because after the war, the population evolved.
Before you go on, let me just make this a bit more clear for the viewers. So what we are discussing here right now is how technology has been very important in how these generations have developed. So what you are trying to say is that the use of social media, how do you think it has been important to you growing up?
So it has been important to us growing up, the use of social media, because it makes our life easier, but at the same time it makes us more prepared. And you were saying before that we weren't happy because we weren't playing with our friends or stuff like that, but actually we aren't happy because of all the stress that the generation before us has put on us. We will have to deal with climate change problems. We have higher standards nowadays in school. We have to do more studies, speak more languages.
Let me stop you there. So you're saying climate change is because of us. So let me tell you, it's completely wrong. Climate change started in the Industrial Revolution, and that time it was in the 1800s, to the end of 1800s. So what you're saying is completely false. Yes, there's climate change, and there's also reasons for the climate change. And let me just say, also, you are trying to make a difference, but it's us, back in the day, we didn't know there was this idea of the climate change and how bad is it going. So with the technology we created, we managed to know that climate change is actually a problem. So you should be thanking us for finding this information.
Let me also add that all these cell phones that are being used are obviously take a lot of materials to make, and that can also help reinforce climate change. So all the generations have been victims and also creators of climate change. Do you have any facts that you would like to give us?
I can't really add anything to that.
Okay.
Yes, and you said when you were young, you had to fight for everything and to fight to live, basically. Well, this is true, but nowadays we have to fight in different ways. For example, we have to fight to change the world. We have to fight to change what people think. For example, feminism is an idea that you started after the Second World War, and we are pursuing it, and we have to fight for it still to make it grow bigger.
Doesn't that just shows that both of the generation we both do our own work to get something done?
Yes, that can be very interesting question. Would you say that it has been important to you what kind of work you've grown up doing, and how have you been able to choose your professions?
So this is an amazing question. The reason is most people do the work that they love, and I completely agree with it. But for us, it was so much harder because there wasn't that many options of a job. For us, if in the future, back then I said I wanted to be a social media creator. It wasn't even known. There wasn't this big broad and idea of these works that you can do. And for education reasons, for us education wasn't as good as yours, and I would always I admit to that, but for us we had to work for everything we got. So I think the biggest problem with the Generation Z is that they're so self-centered, and they are not perseverant, and they're lazy. They didn't learn the effort that we had to put in everything we did. So
May I interrupt you over here? It is said that 77% of Generation Z students and young adults feel they will have to work harder compared to the past generations in order to have a satisfying and fulfilling professional life. Doesn't that make us perseverant then?
That is true. Apparently, we have learned that Generation Z they have learned from millennials who obviously had a harder work environment. They have learned from them and want to use that to develop themselves.
So one about you said you pretty much said you have higher standards, and maybe it's true, but let me tell you that Bill Gates, again, I'm using him again, who created Microsoft, is a dropout, a Harvard dropout. So he doesn't say anything of the university you go. And the higher standards is something you're putting to yourself, and it's just a mindset. For us, we didn't have the same idea of higher standards. It wouldn't change anything in our lives.
Okay, well,
Yes, but
to conclude, because we are running out of time, we have on one side baby boomers who had different education and a different environment where they grew up with less technology, and it was obviously after the Second World War. And on the other side, we have Generation Z who grew up with all this technology, but who may have had higher standards and who need to do more to achieve the same things. I hope that was enough to whet your appetite on the subject of millennials. Thank you and good night. Generation Z.
Generation Z. Generation Z.
Generation Z.
Generation Z.
Generation Z.
Generation Z.